Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're cracking open Moshe Feldenkrais's Learning to Learn.
Oh, this is a good one.
It's a really fascinating guide. It's got all these insightful strategies. I'm excited to dig in and see what we can uncover in terms of maybe some unconventional approaches to learning.
Yeah, I think what's so cool about this particular book is so often we're focused on like the what we're learning, but we kind of neglect the H-how.
Yeah.
And understanding the H-how, I think, can really unlock a lot of potential.
I think this deep dive is going to be really eye-opening. We're going to be exploring some pretty counterintuitive ideas. One of them is like how slowing down can actually boost speed and power. We'll be looking at the link between pleasure and effective learning, and then why that urge to try hard might actually be holding you back.
Yeah, and even we'll delve into this concept of doing a little less than your best. It sounds crazy, but there's some compelling logic behind it.
I'm ready to have my mind blown. Let's get into it. So, one of the things that Feldenkrais emphasizes a lot is time and slowness. He's very much about resisting that urge to rush.
Yeah.
Which is kind of intriguing, especially when you're looking for efficient learning. It makes you wonder, does taking it slow actually translate to better results? What do you think?
Well, I think when we rush, we tend to tense up, and that leads to confusion, which makes learning feel like a chore.
Right.
We get so fixated on the end goal, and we miss those subtle nuances that pave the way to mastery.
Yeah, it's like that classic example of learning to ride a bike, right? Remember that feeling of like flailing and overexerting yourself and you just end up wobbling even more?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And then comes that aha moment where you discover those subtle adjustments that bring balance and flow.
Yeah, and Feldenkrais, I think, believes that slowing down allows us to perceive these nuances and integrate them into our learning. So that actually ties into something else that really struck me as I was reading this, and that's the idea that you learn through pleasure. He talks about pleasant sensations, not, grueling effort, which kind of goes against the grain of, no pain, no gain, right? So
It does.
it seems so counterintuitive to think that, enjoyable learning could be the most effective.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of brilliant because when we're relaxed and enjoying ourselves, our brains are primed for optimal learning.
Yeah.
Our breathing becomes effortless.
Yeah.
Movements are more efficient, and we absorb and retain information so much better.
It's like that feeling of earning, that new skill you've learned in a way that's more satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely see how a positive learning experience can lead to like a deeper understanding and mastery.
Mm-hmm.
And there's neuroscience to back it up. When we experience pleasure, our brain releases dopamine,
Yeah.
which is a neurotransmitter linked to motivation and reward.
Yeah.
So it creates this positive feedback loop
Oh, wow.
that reinforces the learning process.
That's great. So if we're not supposed to try hard, what are we supposed to do? Like, what's the alternative? Because he specifically warns against trying hard and trying to do nicely.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what's the underlying problem with putting in that maximum effort?
Well, I think the fascinating thing is that this excessive striving it often stems from a sense of inadequacy. We believe we must push ourselves beyond our limits to achieve something worthwhile.
Right.
And this pressure to succeed can actually, it's amplified by societal expectations too. Right?
It's like we're trying to prove something.
Exactly. And that introduces tension and self-consciousness, which hijacks our attention.
Yeah.
And it hinders effective learning. We become so focused on the outcome that we lose sight of the process.
It's like, it reminds me of how people approach a podcast like this. You as a listener, you're tuning in for clear structure, engaging delivery, not to feel overwhelmed or lectured to. It's about enjoying this journey of discovery, not just, reaching the destination.
That's a great analogy, yeah. I think creating a relaxed and enjoyable learning environment makes us much more receptive to new information.
Totally.
It's about fostering a sense of curiosity and exploration rather than pressure and performance.
So then he introduces this concept of differentiation, which sounds kind of complex, but it's really about this fine-tuning of our awareness. Right?
Absolutely. It's about sensing subtle differences in movement and effort. The lighter our effort, the more attuned we become to these nuances and can make those finer adjustments that lead to true skill development.
Yeah. So it's not just about going through the motions. It's about really paying attention to our bodies and how they're responding to the learning process.
Think about it with your other senses. You can detect a tiny change in weight when you're carrying something light,
Oh, yeah.
but not when you're overloaded. It's the same with movement. Lighter effort makes us more sensitive to subtle variations, and that leads to greater control and precision.
Right. This is all making sense. But I'm wondering, does this imply we should never push ourselves? What about, situations in life that really demand that maximum effort?
That's a great question. I think Feldenkrais does acknowledge the distinction between learning and those real-life scenarios where
Yeah.
giving it our all is necessary sometimes.
Right.
But he argues that efficiency honed through mindful practice
Okay.
allows us to access that greater power when needed without unnecessary strain.
Right. So like you've mastered those fundamentals, you've developed that sensitivity to your movements.
Yeah.
And so when you're in that high pressure moment, you're not wasting energy on tension or inefficient movement.
Exactly. It's like building a strong foundation for a house.
Okay.
A solid base
Yeah.
enables greater height and resilience against challenges.
Okay. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here, but I still have another question, and that is, if we technically have enough energy to waste, why bother with efficiency at all?
Well, that brings us to the energy equation. Unused energy doesn't simply vanish, it transforms, and often not in a good way.
You mean it manifests as stress and tension?
Precisely. That unused energy can turn into tight muscles, wear and tear on your joints, even mental fatigue. Efficiency isn't just about speed, it's about long-term well-being.
Oh, wow. That's like a real aha moment, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly efficiency isn't just about productivity, it's about health and longevity.
Absolutely. And it circles back to our point about pleasure.
Yeah.
When we move efficiently, it feels good. Our bodies are designed for grace and ease, and tapping into that is incredibly rewarding. It's about finding that sweet spot where effortlessness meets effectiveness.
So Feldenkrais is saying, ditch this idea of powering through
Yeah.
and embrace this more mindful approach. It's about working smarter, not harder, which I think aligns really well with our desire to learn efficiently without feeling overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
And speaking of awareness, he also has a very unique perspective on attention, doesn't he?
He does.
It's not about laser focus like we often hear.
Right. He advocates for a more expansive kind of attention. Think of it as panoramic awareness.
Yeah.
The ability to take in the whole picture
Yeah.
while still being able to zero in on specific details.
So expanding our field of vision rather than narrowing it down to a single point.
Exactly.
And it's a much more holistic way of taking in information.
This allows us to see the connections between different ideas and concepts.
Yeah.
We grasp the bigger picture while still appreciating the nuances.
So it's not about blocking out distractions or creating some sort of mental vacuum. It's about being aware of your surroundings, how they relate to what you're learning. It's about being present in the moment, open to those new connections.
Imagine a chef trying to learn a new recipe while solely fixated on the instructions. They might miss crucial cues from the stovetop, the texture of ingredients, or even their own intuition. Right.
That's a great way to illustrate it. So it's not just about what we pay attention to, but how we pay attention.
Exactly. Feldenkrais encourages a soft focus.
Okay.
A state of relaxed alertness where we're open to new information without fixating on any one thing.
So you're creating space for that learning to happen organically rather than trying to force it into this predetermined mold.
Yes.
It's about trusting the process and allowing yourself to be guided by curiosity.
That's a wonderful way to put it.
Yes.
It's about shifting our mindset from control to receptivity, from striving to allowing.
This is incredible. This is so fascinating. I'm curious, though, how do we cultivate this in a practical sense? How do we develop this more expansive type of attention?
Well, one simple yet powerful practice is to simply be more aware of our surroundings.
You mean noticing the sounds and the smells and the sensations? Like, really?
Precisely. And also noticing how our bodies feel, our posture, our breathing, any areas of tension or discomfort. It's about bringing awareness to the whole experience, not just the specific task at hand.
So you're integrating the learning process into your life more fully. It's not just this isolated activity. It's about being present in your body, your environment. It creates a much richer and more engaging experience.
Exactly. As we become more attuned to our bodies and surroundings, we naturally notice more details and make connections that we might have missed before.
This sounds a lot like mindfulness. Are you saying that mindfulness practices can help us develop this soft focus?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mindfulness practices like meditation can be incredibly valuable in training our attention and developing that relaxed alertness.
Okay.
It's about observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment, cultivating a sense of presence and acceptance.
So instead of trying to force yourself to concentrate, you're learning to be more present and receptive to whatever arises.
Precisely. And I think this ties in beautifully with everything we've been discussing today. Slowing down, embracing pleasure, doing a little less, and cultivating a more expansive kind of attention.
Yeah.
It's about creating a learning environment that is supportive, enjoyable, and conducive to deep understanding.
This has been so eye-opening. It feels like Feldenkrais is giving us a whole new framework for learning.
Yes.
It's rooted in self-awareness,
Mm,
mindfulness, and a deep respect for the learning process itself.
absolutely.
It's about honoring our own unique learning styles and creating a path that feels authentic and sustainable for us as individuals.
And it's a framework that emphasizes the importance of the journey, not just the destination.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a lifelong love of learning, one that is driven by curiosity, joy, and a sense of personal empowerment.
I'm already feeling inspired to rethink my approach to learning and how I've been doing things.
That's fantastic. And I think it's important to remember that this is just the beginning. As we continue to explore Feldenkrais's work, we'll uncover even more insights and strategies that can help us unlock our full learning potential.
This deep dive has already sparked a lot of new ideas and new perspectives for me. And I'm sure our listeners feeling the same way. We've covered so much ground already, but there's still so much more to explore.
There is. We've only just scratched the surface of Feldenkrais's insights on learning. In the next part, we'll delve deeper into some practical applications of these ideas.
Absolutely. So stay tuned for part 2 of this deep dive, where we uncover even more valuable insights from learning to learn.
It's interesting, isn't it, how we tend to think about learning as this serious, demanding thing. But Feldenkrais kind of reminds us that it can be enjoyable, even playful sometimes.
I love that. When we're relaxed, we're having fun, our brains are just more receptive to new information, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But this whole concept of doing a little less, I'm still so intrigued by it. It almost feels like we're going against the grain of our whole achievement-oriented culture, doesn't it?
It does. We're, constantly bombarded with messages about pushing harder, going further, never giving up.
Yeah.
But Feldenkrais suggests this can actually be counterproductive to learning.
Yeah, because it creates that tension, that fear of failure, which could block our ability to really learn and grow, right? It's like we're putting so much pressure on ourselves to get it right that we forget to actually enjoy the process.
Exactly. It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
When we let go of that need to achieve a specific outcome, we open ourselves up to new possibilities and allow that learning to unfold more organically. It becomes less about proving ourselves and more about exploring and discovering.
This reminds me of his distinction between learning and performance.
Uh-huh.
He seems to suggest that the skills developed through this more mindful, less is more approach are actually more robust, more adaptable to real-life situations.
Absolutely. When we prioritize efficiency and ease in our learning, we're not simply memorizing steps or techniques, right? We're developing a deeper understanding of the underlying principles.
Okay.
It's like building a house. A solid foundation allows for greater flexibility and creativity in the design.
So it's not just about learning how to play, like, a specific song on the piano. It's about understanding, like, how music works.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's about developing a fluency that allows for improvisation and adaptation.
Precisely. And that deeper understanding allows us to apply those skills to new situations. We're not limited by these rigid rules or expectations.
Right.
Think about a chef who has mastered the fundamentals of cooking. They can confidently create new dishes, experiment with flavors, adapt to unexpected ingredients because they understand at a core level those principles. Right.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense, especially when you consider how quickly the world's changing. We need to be able to learn and adapt constantly.
Right.
But I'm still curious about how this do a little less approach actually plays out in practice. Can you give us like a concrete example of how this works?
Sure. Let's revisit Feldenkrais's running analogy. Instead of, pushing yourself to run as fast as you can, you intentionally hold back. You run at a pace that feels comfortable, sustainable. It's about finding that sweet spot where you're challenging yourself without overwhelming yourself.
So you're not pushing yourself to that point of exhaustion or pain. It's more about finding a rhythm that feels good, allows you to stay present in that experience.
Right. And because you're not depleting all your energy reserves, you finish the run feeling energized and knowing you could have done more if you wanted to.
Right.
This creates a sense of possibility, and it encourages you to come back for more.
It's like that feeling, that sense of accomplishment without the exhaustion. That's what motivates you to lace up your shoes again tomorrow. You're not associating running with suffering, so it becomes something that you look forward to.
Exactly. And as you continue to practice this way, you'll naturally start to run a little faster and further without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Because you're not forcing it. The progress feels effortless and enjoyable.
Yeah. It's like that saying, slow and steady wins the race. It's about consistency and sustainability, not about burning yourself out in a burst of effort.
Exactly. And this principle can be applied to any skill or area of knowledge we're trying to learn.
Right.
By pacing ourselves, focusing on the process, and avoiding that sense of strain, we can achieve far more in the long run.
This has been incredibly helpful. It's really making me rethink my own approach to learning. I tend to be very goal-oriented, always pushing myself to reach that next milestone, but I'm starting to see how that mindset can sometimes be a hindrance.
Yeah, it's a common trap. We live in a culture that values achievement and productivity above all else. But learning shouldn't be a race.
Yeah.
It's a process of discovery and growth. It's about expanding our minds and capabilities, not about checking boxes or meeting deadlines.
That's so true. We need to give ourselves permission to slow down, enjoy the process, learn at our own pace. It's about cultivating a lifelong love of learning, not just chasing after the next achievement.
I couldn't agree more. And I think this ties back to our discussion about panoramic awareness. When we're so focused on the destination, we often miss the beauty and richness of the journey itself. It's like we're so busy rushing to the end of the book that we forget to savor those individual words and sentences that make up the story.
That's a beautiful analogy. It's about being present in the moment and appreciating those nuances of the learning process. It's about cultivating a sense of curiosity and wonder rather than just striving for the end result.
Precisely. And this brings us back to Feldenkrais's unique perspective on attention. It's not about laser focus, but about cultivating a more expansive awareness, a kind of soft focus that allows us to see the bigger picture while still being attuned to those details.
Yeah, we touched on this earlier, but I'd love to explore it a little bit further. Can you elaborate on how this panoramic awareness differs from the more traditional idea of concentration?
Sure. The traditional concentration often involves narrowing our focus to a single point, right? Blocking out distractions, trying to maintain that laser-like intensity. While this can be helpful in certain situations, it can also be limiting. It's like looking at the world through a narrow tunnel.
Okay.
We might see one thing clearly, but we miss everything else that's happening around us.
That makes sense. It can lead to a very rigid and inflexible approach to learning.
It can.
Panoramic awareness seems to offer a more holistic perspective. What do you say?
Panoramic awareness is about expanding that field of vision, taking in a wider range of information, and seeing the connections between the different elements. It's like looking at the world through a wide-angle lens. We see a broader perspective, but we can still zoom in on specific details when needed.
So it's not about ignoring distractions or trying to create some sort of mental vacuum. It's about being aware of your surroundings and how they relate to what you're learning. It's about incorporating that context into the learning experience.
Precisely. Think of a musician in an orchestra. They need to be aware of their own instrument and their individual part, but they also need to be attuned to the other musicians, the conductor, the overall rhythm and harmony of the piece. It's that awareness of the whole that creates this truly beautiful and powerful performance.
That's such a vivid example. I can see how this type of attention could be incredibly valuable in any field, whether it's music or art or science or even just everyday life. It's about seeing that interconnectedness of things and understanding how those different elements influence each other.
Absolutely. And it's a skill that can be cultivated through practice. One way to develop this panoramic awareness is to simply pay more attention to our surroundings. Notice the sights, sounds, smells, and sensations around you. Pay attention to the details that you might normally overlook.
It's like retraining our brains to see the world with fresh eyes, to appreciate that richness and complexity of our environment. It's about cultivating a sense of curiosity and wonder.
Exactly. And as we become more aware of our external environment, we can also start to pay more attention to our internal environment, right? Our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations. This is where mindfulness practices can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, mindfulness seems to play such a key role in Feldenkrais's approach to learning. It's about cultivating that non-judgmental awareness of our present moment experience.
Yeah.
Being present in our bodies, in our minds, without getting caught up in in those thoughts or emotions.
You're right. Mindfulness practices like meditation can help us train our attention, develop that soft focus that Feldenkrais talks about, and become more attuned to both our inner and outer worlds. It's about creating a space of calm and clarity amidst the busyness of life.
So instead of trying to force ourselves to concentrate, we're learning to be more present, more receptive to whatever arises. It's a more gentle and an inviting approach to learning, one that's grounded in self-awareness and acceptance.
It is, and I think this ties in beautifully with everything we've been discussing today. Slowing down, embracing pleasure, doing a little less, and cultivating that more expansive kind of attention. It's all about creating a learning environment that is supportive, enjoyable, and conducive to deep understanding.
This has been such an enlightening conversation. I'm starting to see how Feldenkrais's ideas can be applied to so many different areas of life. It's not just about learning a new skill or acquiring knowledge. It's about cultivating a way of being in the world that is more mindful, more present, and more attuned to our own unique learning process.
I couldn't agree more. It's about embracing the journey of learning as much as the destination.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a lifelong love of learning that is driven by curiosity, joy, and a sense of personal empowerment.
I feel like we've uncovered so many valuable insights already, but there's still so much more to explore in Feldenkrais's work. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this idea of delaying gratification in a world that's obsessed with instant results. Feldenkrais suggests focusing on the process of learning rather than rushing to that end result. It's a perspective that seems to go against our ingrained desire for quick wins and immediate satisfaction.
It's a fascinating concept, and I think it speaks to the heart of Feldenkrais's philosophy. He believed that true learning takes time and patience.
Right.
It's not about instant gratification, but about cultivating a deep understanding and mastery over time. It's like planting a seed.
Okay.
You need to nurture it, water it, give it time to grow. You can't force a flower to bloom overnight.
That's such a great analogy. It highlights the importance of patience and persistence in that learning process. It's about trusting that those results will come if we stay committed to that process and focus on those small steps along the way.
Exactly, and I think this ties back to our earlier discussion about doing a little less than our utmost. When we focus on the process, we're less likely to get caught up in that pressure to perform or achieve a specific outcome. We can relax into the learning experience and allow it to unfold naturally.
So it's about shifting our mindset from what will I achieve to how can I learn and grow. It's about finding joy in that process of discovery and exploration rather than fixating on the end goal.
Precisely. And when we approach learning with this mindset, we're often surprised by how much we actually achieve. Because we're not limiting ourselves by our preconceived notions of what's possible. We're open to exceeding our own expectations. Like we're removing the ceiling from our potential.
This is all starting to make so much sense. It's like Feldenkrais is offering us a completely different paradigm for learning. It's not about striving and pushing, but about cultivating a sense of ease, enjoyment, and trust in the process. It's about finding a sustainable approach to learning that nourishes our minds and our spirits.
I completely agree, and I think this is what makes Feldenkrais's work so relevant today. In a world that's increasingly fast-paced and demanding, we need to find ways to slow down, reconnect with ourselves, and rediscover that joy of learning.
This deep dive has been such a gift. I'm feeling inspired and energized to apply these principles to my own life and learning. I'm curious to hear how our listeners responding to these ideas. Are you feeling that same sense of excitement and possibility?
I certainly am, and I hope our listener is feeling empowered to approach their own learning journey with a sense of curiosity, playfulness, and trust in the process. Feldenkrais's work offers a wealth of wisdom that can help us transform the way we learn and grow.
Absolutely. And as we continue this deep dive, we'll explore even more practical strategies and insights from learning to learn. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll delve into specific techniques and exercises that you can use to enhance your learning experience. Welcome back to our deep dive into learning to learn. This exploration of Moshe Feldenkrais' work has been packed with ahas, really challenging conventional ideas about how we learn best.
It has. We've really challenged that notion of pushing ourselves to the limit. We've explored the power of pleasure in learning. And even delved into that fascinating concept of panoramic awareness.
It's like he's handing us a whole new playbook, right, for learning. One that prioritizes efficiency, enjoyment, and a deep understanding of of the process itself.
One of the most valuable takeaways, I think, is that learning should be a joyful experience.
Yeah.
When we approach it with curiosity and a sense of play, we're more likely to stay engaged and make real progress.
Yeah, it's like tapping back into that innate love of learning that we all had as children before the pressures of achievement kind of took over.
Yeah, learning should be a source of empowerment and excitement, not stress and frustration.
So how do we put all these ideas into practice? If I'm learning a new language or picking up a musical instrument or even trying to improve a skill I already have, where do I begin?
First, I would encourage you to release any preconceived notions about what learning should look like.
Yeah.
Let go of that idea of cramming or forcing or pushing yourself to the limit.
Okay.
It's about working with your natural rhythm, not against it.
So no more all-nighters or comparing myself to some mythical prodigy.
Exactly. Approach it with curiosity and a willingness to experiment. Start by setting aside even just 15 or 20 minutes each day
Okay.
and commit to showing up consistently.
And during those sessions, the key is to focus on the process, not the outcome.
Right. Precisely. Don't worry about how quickly you're progressing or compare yourself to others. Instead, tune into the sensations in your body, the nuances of the skill, and allow yourself to simply be present in the experience.
So if I'm learning guitar, instead of obsessing over, mastering that complex chord progression,
Right.
I should be focusing on how my fingers feel on the strings, the sound the instrument makes, and just the pure joy of creating music, even if it's a simple melody.
That's it. And as you practice this way, you'll naturally start to improve. It won't feel like a struggle. It will feel like an unfolding.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It takes the pressure off and allows us to really savor that journey.
And that's where the magic happens. When we let go of the need to control the outcome, we open ourselves to new possibilities
Yeah.
and even surprise ourselves with what we can achieve.
It's like we're giving ourselves permission to be learners again, not just performers or achievers.
Yeah, exactly. And this is so important because learning is a lifelong process. There's always something new to discover, a new skill to master, a new way to challenge ourselves.
This deep dive has certainly challenged me to rethink my relationship with learning. I'm seeing how these seemingly simple ideas can have such a profound impact on how we approach any learning endeavor.
Me too. And I think it's important to remember that Feldenkrais's work isn't about providing a rigid set of rules.
Yeah.
It's about offering a framework, a new lens through which to view the process of learning.
It's about empowering ourselves to become more conscious, more mindful, and more joyful learners.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
It is. But this is just the beginning. Remember, learning is a journey, not a destination. So keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep that spark of curiosity alive. Until next time, happy learning.